Alright, let's see now. Alright, hey everyone. So, I'll be talking about the triple lock on Ireland. And what is this? A lot of people would like to know the realistic idea. So, we'll go into what they propose as Irish neutrality in a way and motion private members. This was debated back on the 26th of March 2025. Now, for all viewers advised, there's going to be a lot of reading, you know. Oh yeah, and I probably should share this as well. Okay, just give me a moment. Just do one more thing. A lot of rain today. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Like I probably should keep an eye on who's actually interacting with for this case. Let's see here now. Let's see anyone we can actually interact with, but I don't know. Not been rain today. No, I don't know if anyone will see me, but however, don't worry about the gritty nitty bits. So yeah, the triple lock mechanism. Who initiated to begin with? Um, well, let's see. We'll just read off what the law is got into debate. Now, just to know, debates go on forever. There's a lot of talking. Irish people talk a lot, and these are meant to be very brainy Irish people. But the amount of bullshit they'll talk is going to be unreal. So anyone who does not want to have to deal with this major headache, but don't worry, I'll go into the other bits first before I go and delve into this crap. I don't want people to have a headache. So let's see. This is what the RTE is. Now they're not going to do a proper review of it because they didn't bother to actually look into it. For 65 years, the triplelock has determined when Irish soldiers are sent abroad, but new legislation could change how it works. Yeah, at least they got the skim of it, but I'm not going to read all their articles. Sorry, RT, I'm not saying, but it's just a review. Like, you didn't do anything proper. Uh-huh. Yeah, buddy, you probably didn't do all your homework looking at it. Yeah, I'm not taking any bit of garbage. There's a lot of points that are not mentioned that are on this debate. So you definitely have to do your homework. Yeah, I will read the bill and you read it because you missed a lot of relevant info. And this is what our Defence Amendment bill they're doing right now. Bill initial entitled an act to provide for the dispatch and deployment for service outside the state of members of the Defence Force, to provide in certain circumstances for the suspension of members of the Defence Force, to provide in certain circumstances for the dismissal of officers of the Defence Force for these and other purposes to be amended in the Defence Act 1954 and certain other acts to provide for related matters. Yeah, I don't fully believe that. Dismissal. Why would you dismiss officers? Why? And I did download that. We will have a look at it there in a bit, but there's a lot to go into that. But the main issue is now to go over, yeah, have the legislation for how bills are processed, because that might be relevant later. Is my veto remote going out way big or what's going on here? What are you doing? You acting up? Let's try that. Come on now. Alright, that's okay. Just making sure. But yeah, this is sponsored by the Defense Minister for Defense. So how does this relate? Now we're going to be going to here it is. The Defense Act 1954. Now there's a lot of segments in this, so there's going to be a lot going. So it splits the sections into short title and commencement, interpretation generally, application of act to persons subject to military law, period of emergency, active service, employment on ships, prosecution of certain officers by the minister, provision in relation to regulations. Yeah, I bet it's to do with this one here. Prosecution of certain officers by the minister. I wonder what she'll change in that. That's what I'm wondering. Then repeals expenses, Council of Defense, the Chief of Staff, the Adjutant General, the Quartermaster General, military branches, the Department of Defense, Inspector General, the Judge Advocate General, the Council of Defense, the Chief of Staff, the Adjutant General, and the Quartermaster General, military branches, the Department of Defense, the Inspector General, the Judge Advocate General. Part 3. Raising, Maintenance, Command, Constitution, Organization, Defense Force, Military Education, Malicious Matters relating to the Defense Force. Chapter 1. Raising, Maintenance, and Command of the Defense Force. Authority to raise and maintain the Defense Forces, Military Command. Chapter 2. Constitution of the Defense Forces and General Organization thereof. 18. Constitution of Defense Forces. 19. Constitution of Permanent Defense Force. 20. Constitution of the Reserve Defense Force. 21. Classes of the Reserve Defense Force. Sorry, 22. Organization of Defense Forces. 23. Service Corps. 24. Defense Commission ranks in the Defense Forces. 25. Non-commissioned ranks in the Defense Forces. 26. General regulations in relation to the Defense Forces. Chapter 11. Military Education. 27. Establishment of educational institutions. 28. Other educational arrangements. 29. Cadetships. A friend of mine is a cadet, actually. I don't know why he's doing it in IT back a time ago. Uh, and also, one of my cousins actually happened to be in the Air Force. But that's for another time. Chapter 4. Maliciousness, provisions in relation to the defense forces. 30. Special powers in relation to defense. 31. Right of entry on land. 32. Acquisition of land, etc. by agreement. 33. Compulsory acquisitions of land or rights over land. 34. User of land by the minister. 35. Right administer to erect and maintain certain apparatus on land and vicinity of service aerodromes. Aerodromes? 36. Restrictions on the use of land and vicinity of service aerodromes. 27. Billet during a period of emergency. 38. Billet in peacetime. This is going to be probably revised these for from 35 to 30 to 40, I'd say. Exercise of powers vested in holder military office. 40. Positions as orders to military authorities, and also 38. Billet in peacetime. Part 5. Oh, probably won't be seeing my model that well, but don't worry about it. Just the way things are going right now. The weather. Yeah. That's really becoming disastrous. Part 4. Personal Defense Forces. Chapter 1. Officers. 41. Persons eligible to be appointed officers. 42. Appointment of officers and commissions. 43. Oath to be taken by officers. 44. Assignment of officers. Reserve Defence Force. In particular, has the Reserve Defence Force. 45. Promotion of officers. 46. Placing of officer at half pay. 47. Retirement of officers in Permanent Defence Force. 48. Relinquishment of commissions by officers of the Reserve Defence Force. 49. Resignation of officers. 50. Dismissal of officers. 51. Effective dates of appointment, etc. of officers. Notification of appointments, etc. So if I say the O to be 1, then retirement of officers, resignation and dismissal, and other. Chapter 2, Men, Division 1, enlistment and discharge, etc. of men. 53. Enlistment in the Permanent Defence Force for service during a fixed period, either in Permanent Defence Force or partially. I say she's probably going to add in, in regards to foreigners that have become part of Ireland's latest enrolment, because you've seen them in the Garda Síochána, which is something they should not be even a part of, because they should not be even entitled to it, which you're making a loophole for, which is a bad idea, and they're probably going to do the same with this. I should type this up actually. Probably won't be a bad thing to at least type this in here. Give me a minute while I just go up a sticky note. So let's see. Okay, and then come on, bold. Not responding? You're a word pad. What is there not to respond upon? Phooey. You should not need to act up that rationally. Ireland. For goodness sake. Okay. Sorry, just getting one more. And defense. I know. Sorry about that. I was just reading that up, you know. Okay. So I know I don't have much time, so I'll have to keep it to the point. But there is a lot of reading, so we'll see how much I get done today. Like I will do a summarized video of all this because like it's going to take forever to try and implement, and it's going to take a whole lot of brain power to function. And the fact that I don't really get much time, I'll see what I can do for everyone to make it short, sweet, to the point, and try edit a few things to show the relevance in the situation for Ireland's future on the triplelock and neutrality. Okay. Okay. 53. Enlistment in the Permanent Defence Force for service during a fixed period, either in the Permanent Defence Force or partly in the Department Defence Force and partly in the Reserve Defence Force. 54. Enlistment in the Department Permanent Defence Force for serving during a period of emergency. 55. Direct enlistment in Reserve Defence Force for service during a fixed period. So these might get revised, I'd say, or changed. Recruitment regulations. There's another one. Mode of enlisting recruitments. Oath of enlisting. Effective signing declaration required by attestations paper in compliance with Section 58. Yeah, these are going to be very crucial. So I better copy these. I kind of had a feeling those were in there. I should be really highlighting all these. It might be actually a relevant idea, you know? Anywho, code sections or proviso on come on, don't maybe like that. I know. Okay, do like that. Is it getting stormy or is it just me? But yeah, I'll check the rest later. So appointment to Service Corps 60, enlistment for general service and appointment to Service Corps 61, transfer of men and permanent defense force enlisted under Section 53 from one service corps to another. Assignment of reservists to classes of reservists 62. Assignment of a reservist to a particular class or reservist variation of engagement, re-engagement, and continuation in service. 63. Change of conditions of service of men enlisted under Section 53. 64. Re-engagement of men in the Permanent Defense Force enlisted under Section 53. 65. Continuance in 21 service of after 21 years service of men of the Permanent Defense Force. 66. Extension of the term of original enlistment or reserves enlisted under Section 55. 67. Re-engagement of reservists. 68. Continuance in reserves after 21 years of service of reservists. Transfer to Reserve Defense Force and discharge. 69. Period of desertion or absence without leave to be excluded in reckoning service of men of the Permanent Defense Force. Transfer to the Reserve Defense Force or discharge of men of the Permanent Defense Force enlisted under Section 53. 71. Discharge of men of the Permanent Defense Force enlisted under Section 54. 72. Discharging of reservists. Discharge of otherwise than on completion of service. 73. Discharge of men by direction of minister or authorized officer. 74. Discharge of reservists becoming members of either House of the Oireachtas. Yeah, that's something. I did not know that was a thing. I'll just copy that and put that in here. Something I want to think about. 75. Discharge by purchase. 76. Discharge of persons under 18. 77. Discharge of apprentices, status of enlisted person in the receipt of pay as a man and of persons informal enlisted. 78. Status of enlisted person in the receipt of pay as a man. 79. Status of persons enlisted or re-engaged where error or legality enlisted or re-engaging. This would be one. She's probably going to try to change that if she has a way. I'm just trying to read off the top of my head what will likely be targeted just by looking at it. Just from the title alone says enough. Okay. Yeah, but general provisions as to discharge. 8. Order for discharge of men. 81. Provisions in relation to discharge. 82. Certificate on discharge. 83. Collection and disposal of monies paid in respect of discharge of men. Promotion of men to higher non-commissioned rank and reduction in rank of non-commissioned officers. There's a lot of ranking involved in this. This is under 84. Promotion of men to higher non-commissioned rank and reduction in rank of non-commissioned officers. Chapter 3. Service of members of the Defence Forces. Service of members of the Permanent Defence Force. 85. Service of members of the Permanent Defence Force. Service officers of the Reserve Defence Force. 86. Service of officers of the Reserve Defence Force. Service of reservists. 87. Calling out for the reservists on a permanent service. 88. Calling out for the certain reservists on a permanent certain service otherwise other than under Section 87. 89. Service of reservists called out on a permanent service. 90. Calling out of reservists in aid of the civil power. Hello? What's this about? That was a very unusual one to get anyway. Civil. I wonder what's going to be changed there is my question. Just look at anything that sparks attention. Annual training of reservists, voluntary training of reservists, attendance of reservists for inspection, attachment of reservists, call out when a permanent service, etc. 96, service of notice of reservists. Chapter 4, pay and allowances of members of the Defence Forces. 97, regulations to pay, allowance and gratuities of members of the Defence Force. 98, deductions from pay of man in respect of certain court orders. 99, deductions from pay of man in respect of maintenance of wife and children. 100, restrictions on deductions from pay, etc. 101, withholding of pay in certain cases. 102, prohibition of assignments of pay, etc. Chapter 5, disqualification, exemption, privileges or members of the Defence Forces. 103, prohibitions of members of political and secret society. Hello, that's a new one. Oh boy, now that's something I was not expecting to even come across. Well, I suppose, but even still, that's one to consider. No. The fact that that was even in there says a lot. I know we're very controversial, but that's one thing you gotta really look out for. Okay, what is it? 104, disqualification from membership of a local authority, exemption from jury service. 106, arms, etc. Members of the Defence Force will be exempt from seizure. 107, exemption of men from civil process. 108, exemption of prosecution, etc. under Section 83 of the Public Assist Act 1938-9. 109, obstruction, etc. Member Garcia Kana. That's one to consider. I'm going to revise all these. Sorry for my language. It's like having to read all these are not going to be pleasant. Just trying to keep in line with what possibly is going to be changed before I read their dialect. 110, non-liability of a person convicted or acquitted by a court martial to be retried by civil court. 111, protection of persons acting under this act. 112, exemptions from duties and tolls. 113, exemptions of members of the Defence Force from certain provisions of the What? That's an interesting one. I'm not saying it'll be changed, but goodness gracious, that's a heck of a one to be given that freely for. Like, I know they're doing a service to the country, but even still, I could see that being revised. Excuse me, not saying it will or not, but just the top. Okay, chapter 6. Malicious provision, redress of wrongs, collection and redistribution of certain property or deceased members of the Defence Force, disposal of personal belongings of deserter, absentee, or person of unsound mind, regulations for purpose of Part 5. These ones may get, these might get revised somehow. Not saying it will, but if I had to guess what these deserters absentee, I say she's going to slip in something there for these migrants if I had to guess. Not saying it's anything against them. It's just a hunch if it is changed to equip for certain individuals. Yeah, just a guess. Okay, so Part 5, Discipline, Chapter 1, Liability to Military Law. 118, persons subject to military law as officers, persons subject to military law as men, liability to military law in respect to status, modification of Part 5 in its application to civilians can subject to place of trial for officers. And okay, this one. This might get changed. Modification. That's something to consider a bit. Let's look at possible ones that might get changed. You want to know. And then, sorry there. Place of trial for offences against the military law. Time limit of trial offences. Chapter 2, offences against military law. There's a lot of these actually. Capital offences by commanders when in action. Capital offences by any person in relation to the enemy. Offences punishable more severely in active service than at other times. Offences related to prisoners of war. This is getting suspicious now. I'm not saying it's going to be a massive a lot of them, but I wonder. I'm not saying she's a traitor to Ireland, but it's just a question. You know? Okay. Offences to prisoners of war. This is something we need to be sure of when evaluating these topics. I know I probably won't get time to read them all. Just going to take a bit of reading, unfortunately. 128, mutiny with violence, mutiny without violence, offences related to mutiny, disobedience to superior officer, striking or offering of violence to a superior officer, insubordinate behavior, disorders, desertion, connivance at desertion, absent without leave, false statement in respect of leave, scandalous conduct of an officer, ill treatment of inferiors, false accusations against officer or man, drunkenness. Damn, could have left that one out. Malingering or maiming, basically if they rip off their body parts and such. Derogatory conduct in regards to trials, negligent or willful interference with lawful custody, escape from custody. I just wonder there. Where was it? This part might be changed if I had to guess. No, I'm just thinking outside the box with each of these. I'm saying they're going to be of relevance, but I don't know what goes on in here nowadays. I'm not saying she says that army is the right stay, but you wouldn't know what really goes on these days, would you? See, obstruction of officer or man carrying out police duties, obstruction of civil power, losing, stranding, or hazarding state ships, unauthorized carriage in ships or aircraft, wrongful acts in relation to aircraft. I'm just trying to be practical. I know there's a lot. If they do revise a lot of these, I don't know. Okay. Let's see. Wrongful acts in relation to aircraft, inaccurate certificate as regards to aircraft, low flying, disobedience of orders of captain of aircraft, fraud by persons in charge of property, stealing, embezzlement, etc. of property, destruction, loss of proper disposal of property, bribery, corruption, or fraud. Not saying that'll be changed, but you never know. You won't know what just get altered these days. Okay. Negligent or fearless driving of service vehicle, unauthorized use of service vehicles, offences in relation to court martial, etc., false evidence, disturbance, etc., and billets, fraudulent enlistment. That's another one. Now I'm just being realistic here. And I'm not trying to be racist, but or was it fascist or whatever you call these terminologies nowadays. Just trying to be realistic here. General offences in relation to enlistment, negligent performance of duties, officers in relation to documents, offences in relation to documents conduct to prejudice of good order and discipline. Okay, conduct to prejudice of good order and discipline, offences impunishable by ordinary law. Chapter 3, Arrest in Courts of Inquiry of Absent Men. Under Entee, Provost Martial Arrest, placing a person's arrested in service custody. Guard Report, Court of Inquiry on Absent Men. Chapter 4, Investigation Summary, Disposition of Charges, Remands for Court Martial and Dispensation with Trial by Court Martial. Acquittal or conviction to be barred to summary proceedings, to the investigator without delay, charges against officers, disposition of charges against men by commanding officers, deposition of charges against privates and semen by subordinate officers, revision of summary awards, trial of accused without preliminary investigation, confession of desertion or fraudulent enlistment, summary of civilian witnesses before authorized officers and commanding officers, regulation in relation to investigation and summary disposition charges. Chapter 5, Court Martial. Acquittal or conviction to bar subsequent trial by court martial, class of court martial, convening of court martial, special powers of convening authorities, constitutional general court martial, constitutional limited court martial, disqualification for members of court martial and for acting as judge, advocate, jurisdiction of court martial, dissolution of court martial, admission to court martial, diverse matters of procedure, counsel at court martials, challenges by accused, voting at court martial on questions other than objection to members of the court, swearing of court, evidence to be on oath, evidence at court martials, insanity accused at time of trial, insanity accused at time of commissions of offence, finding of adequate convictions for offence other than the charge. Effective dates of sentences by court martial, summoning and privilege of witnesses at courts martial, contempt of court martial. Chapter 6, Punishments awardable by court martial for offences against military law. Punishments which may be awarded to officers by court martial, punishments which may be awarded to men by court martial, what sentences to be awarded in respect to all offences, restrictions on sentences of imprisonment, detention on person already undergoing imprisonment and detention, ordered by court martial for repayment and compensation, restoration and seniority loss in service formed by a sentence of a court martial. 7. Action on findings and sentences of court martial. Finding and sentences not to be valid unless confirmed. Confirming authorities. Reference of finding and sentence by confirming authority to superior of confirming authority. Revision by court martials of findings and sentences. Power of confirming authority as to confirmation. Additional powers of confirmation authority in relation to sentencing passed by court martials. mitigation, remission, etc. of sentences other than death sentences after confirmation, the commencement of sentences of penal servitude, imprisonment, detention imposed by way of substitution, suspension of sentences of penal servitude, imprisonment, or detention passed on men, quashing of fining of court martial, restitution of stolen property, right to copy of proceeding of court martial. Sentence to death. Jeez, this is another reason why I'm not really a fan of joining the army. Get this sentence. Execution sentence for penal servitude, execution of sentence of imprisonment of detention, suspension of currency of sentences where a person escapes or is released without proper authority, duty of governor prison to receive prisoners, establishment of military prisoners and detention barracks, regulation of military prisons and detention barracks, assisting prisoners in military prisons, detention barracks to escape, penalty for carrying spurious liquid, drugs, or tobacco to military prisons or detention barracks, penalty for carrying letters, etc., into or out to military prisons or detention barracks. Unsoundness of mind, person in prison or undergoing detention. So we need to be aware of. I'm not saying we're going to do it, but you know. So it's important to be at least somewhat aware. Okay, do that. Alright, let's see here now. Inquest on persons under sentence dying in military prisons or detention barracks. Provisions as to warrants on orders of military authorities. Chapter 8 of Part 5, Chapter 9. Rules of Procedure. Rules of Procedure. I don't know what this procedure is, but it's something to consider. You want to know what the way the courts have been going lately, how they're letting certain individuals off scot-free, so it's something to consider, I guess. I'm not saying they'll do that, but you won't know. Chapter 10. Licentious offences by members of the Reserve Defence Force. Penalty for service of Reserve Defence Force joining armed forces of another state. Punishment of certain offences by reservists. And this is something I did not know. Why would they say that? It's very unusual to have that in there unless there's a case of, just say, Irish Defence Forces joining with rebels in the case, not saying rebels, but you know, like with ISIS or Hamas, you know, them terrorist groups. I'm not saying it's a possibility, but you want to know. Just wondering what this meant to reply or reference to. Punishment of certain offences by reservists, non-attendance of reservists called out for training or on a permanent service, etc. Record and evidence of absence where reserves is called out, wrongful sale, etc. of equipment by members. Hello? They can sell their equipment? Oof. Now that's something to consider. If that were the case, the army, not saying any of them are bad, but if any of them had their hands on supplies and were dealing out to just say rebels, as you call them, or migrants that have been given favor by some politicians, that would not go well. So that's something to consider, you know. Regulations of purposes of Chapter 10, Part 5. I'll have to read that later. There's a lot of reading involved, so I need to be extra careful when going through each of these that might be tweaked or manipulated. Excuse me. So I need to think of what possible things would be outlined here. Not saying I don't know what they're thinking. There could be a lot of other articles or chapters that are missed. Proof of certain matters of evidence, proceedings before civil courts and court martial, evidence of subjugation to military law of offence, officers of the Reserve Defence Force, evidence of certain documents of matters, evidence of conviction or acquitted by civil court, evidence of proceedings of court martial. Chapter 12. Apprehension of suspected deserters and absentees. Apprehension of suspected deserters and absentees. Part 6. Offences in relation to the Defence Force and military property. Recruitment is punishable for false answers. Punishment for pretending to be a deserter. Incite to dissatisfaction. Punishment for inducing members of the Defence Force to desert. Penalty for unlawful recruitment or interfering with recruiting. Penalty for interfering with military duties. Penalty for personation. Statutory declaration. These ones be considered. I'm not saying they have any relevance, but looking at them. Okay. Sorry about all this, but there's going to be a lot to really go over, unfortunately. Wish I had all the time in the world, but I'll see what I can do. So, 259. Statutory declaration in relation to pay, etc. Penalty for purchasing certain military property, unlawful possession of certificates of discharge, forgery of certificate or discharge impersonation. Let's see. These ones would be considered. Let's see. Unlawful wearing of uniform, bringing contempt of uniforms, dyeing or conversion of uniforms, unauthorized use or decoration, penalty for sketch-up, fortification, or trespassing thereon. There's some to consider. I'm not saying, but now you are able to purchase uniforms of the Irish Army, but in this case, it's something you want to consider when doing stuff like that. Okay. So part 7, maneuvers and artillery, rifle and bombing practices. Power to authorize holding of military maneuvers, powers to exercise for purposes of maneuvers, compensation for damages caused by military. Offences in relation to maneuvers, exemption of members of the Defence Force engaged in maneuvers from Section 164, temporary stoppage of traffic during maneuvers. Okay. Give me 1 second here. Why, you actually think they're going to change this? Yeah, I'm not saying it's a probability, but the fact that they're going to need firepower and to use their force when applicable based on the scenario is a thing to consider here. You wonder what they will be thinking, you know? Okay, and then Susie. Zero tolerance, you get me to have a look at this. This is going to be a nightmare in its own right. Literacy needs to be worked upon when doing this too. Part 8. Bylaws as to use land for defense purposes. Interpretation of Part 8. Bylaws to use state of land appropriate for defense purposes for securing public safety. Extensions of power to make bylaws in respect of non-state land where minister has right of uses for defense purposes. Extension of power to make bylaws in respect to adjoining foreshore, sea, or tidal. Okay. This is something to consider. Not saying she's gonna do that, but you would not know what the heck they're gonna be changing in this. So you have to be extra careful what they're possibly changing, you know? If they just delete the whole thing, oh my gosh. That would be the worst outcome. Bylaws as to the rules, notice of intention to make by laws, marking of boundaries, bylaw areas, publication of bylaws, penalties for contravention, bylaws, removal and arrest of offenders, removal of animals, etc., obstruction and assault of unauthorized officers, non-application of Part 8 to the CUR. They just double check that. They might be changed, I'd say, especially the one in the car. There's a lot you don't know about the car. Actually, it was what they do. Let's see. Sorry. Oh, that's a lot of sneeze. Okay. Part 9 Army Nursing Service. The existing nursing service, establishment of the Army Nursing Service, application of this Act to the Army Nursing Service, existing nursing service to be deemed Army Nursing Service, regulations in relation to the Army Nursing Service. Let's say anything would change, but that one is considering how they. You never know, they could add in the case of enhancements and drugs to help the army members. You never know. That's something to consider. I'm not saying they're going to be using body enhancers, but God knows what they have been using already without people being aware of. Application of this Act to the Defense Forces establishment under the Defense Forces Temporary Provisions Act in 1923, interpretation of Part X, or 10, existing forces to be deemed forces established under this Act, existing regular officers and existing reserve officers to be deemed to be conditioned under this Act. Existing regulars, existing reservists, continuance of existing orders, etc., continuance of existing authorizations and directions. Okay, that's something to consider. Existing orders. You would not think of that, but in the case of what existing orders is a real concern if there's anything dangerous or unknown about them. offences and convictions under the Act of 1923 exist in military prisons and detention barracks. Exists in military prisons and detention barracks. What could that be done with? Just being realistic here, if it was in regards to, what is it? If they mobilized it in the case of, not saying the migrants or any other third party of known entity, but if they use that for weaponization of sorts, that is a considerable. This is hot. There is a lot to be considered with this. Version or third party usage in war efforts. Question mark. Okay. And then Part 11 Amendment and Adaptation of Certain Enactments. Oh, good lord, this one I'm going to have a lot of headaches having to read. Because God knows what's going to be in these. Amendments of the Electoral Act in 1923, application of Army Pensions Act in 1923 to 49 to Reserve Defence Force, amendment of the Ministers and Secretary. That one, yeah. Would not know what would be changed there, and I want to be extra cautious with that. You would not know what is actually going to be changed in this as a whole. So there's going to be a lot of changes that I'm going to be suspicious of. Amendment of the Military Service Pensions Act 1923, 4 to 49, Amendment of the Defence Force Pensions Act 1932, Amendment of the Workmen's Compensation Act 1934, Amendment of Section 11 of the Army Pensions Act 1949, adaptation of references to Defence Force and certain enactments. This one, service as a major to be regarded as a service as a lieutenant colonel. Okay, well, that one won't be necessary in this regards, but it's something to consider. Having to read all these, I'm not gonna like. Yeah, at least I got my homework done for a change. Well, if you consider that. Okay, Part 12 Maliciousness of Provisions. 11 Recovery of money due or payable to the minister. Restrictions on recruiting for other states. Entertainments under service directions granted excise license for military counties, right administered to claim salvage in respect of services to state ships. Salvage claims by commanders and crews of the state ships for uniform service of solicitors, apprentices, and existing. This one, okay. I'm just trying to list them out. Then the next one. Okay. Okay. And these two. I wonder what will be revised in this as a whole. It's gonna be so much to have to look through. And I imagine a lot of them have already had a good look through, but what exactly will they be tweaking or removing or altering? This is something that will need to be looked upon. First schedule enactments repealed. Second schedule commission of Army and Naval ranks in the Defence Force. Third schedule non-commissioned Army and Navy ranks in the Defense Forces. Fourth schedule, matters on which regulations may be made under Section 26. Fifth schedule, forms the commission to an officer. Sixth schedule, form a vote on declaration to be taken by or made by officers of the Permanent Defense Force. Seventh schedule, form a vote on declaration to be taken by made by officers of Reserve Defense Force. Eighth schedule, form a vote declaration to be taken or made by men enlisting in Permanent Defense Force under Section 83. Excuse me. Form 8 oath or declaration to be taken or made by the men enlisting in a Permanent Defense Force under Section 54. 10th schedule, form of oath or declaration to be taken or made by men enlisting in the Reserve Defense Force under 55. And then these ones, defense forces that would go in regards to how they react and enact. Okay, so and also here, this one, what? Let me see here now. These few will be questioned for later. What are acts to check on? Okay, and then one more thing to check up on. Last I checked, I stopped at where? Back on 56. So let me just double check anything. I need to do with the minister as well, something to consider. Just a thought, everyone. Just a thought. Okay. So that's pretty much where Defense Act 1954. So here I go to Defense Force. These few will need to be, that's all there is. Which isn't an awful lot, but it's regards to them. And then I should put down underneath. What's the name of this act? Defense Amendment Act. Defense Amendment 1960. Okay. All right. Okay. So we have interpretation, dispatching of contingents of the Permanent Defense Force for service outside the state with the United Nations Emergency Forces, liability of certain members of the Permanent Defense Force for service with the United Nations Emergency Forces, amendment of Principal Act, short title collective citation duration. Okay, well that's for these bits. Don't worry, I will have these tabs open, but in fairness, there's not an awful lot. I'll just go over the Defense Amendment for Act in 1960. Like they're very short. Interpretation, expression of the Principal Act means Defense Act from 1954, which I'll have to revise on that. The expression United Nations Emergency Force means an international force established by the Security Council or the General Assembly of the United Nations for the performance of duties of a police character. This act shall be construed as one with the Principal Act. Yeah, that's something you gotta look out for. The United Nations has been really making great strides, and I'm really concerned with all that. So be aware for this part. United Nations, you would not know what a General Assembly is going to do. And then we're going to 2. A contingent of permanent defense force may be dispatched for service outside the state as part of the United Nations emergency force. A dispatch. Alright, part 3. This section applies at all times to an officer of a permanent defense force appointed on or after the defense of the passing of this act, a man on the permanent defense force enlisted on or after the day of the passing of this act, where a member of the permanent defense force, not being a member of the permanent defense force for a specified paragraph A of this subsection, has offered in writing to render himself liable for external service during a specified period, the minister or an officer authorized in that behalf of the minister has accepted the offer. This section shall also apply to that member of that period. That's an interesting one. I could definitely see that being altered. Altered possibility. Sorry there. Alright, let's see now. Notwithstanding 19 contained in Chapter 3 of Part 4 of the Principal Act, every member of the Permanent Defense Force to whom this section for the time being applies shall be liable to serve outside the state with a contingent of the Permanent Defense Force, which in pursuance of Section 2 of this Act is dispatched or proposed to be dispatched for the service with the United Nations Emergency Force. This one as well might need to be looked at as well. What was it? No, that was the wrong one. I just meant to put under 2. Okay, well, I'll just put it under there. And then that one. Put it out. Put that in. Where did the point be put in? That's right. Put in brackets just to know. Okay, so right there. Been a while since I've done any homeworks in regards to like so this. 4. A member of the Department of Defense Force who is serving outside the state within the United Nations Emergency Force shall, for the purposes of Principal Act, be deemed while so serving to be on active service. Can't see anything changed there. 5. This act may be cited as the Defense Amendment Act in 1960, the Principal Act, and is cited together as the Defense Act 1954. This act shall continue in force until the expiration of 6 months from the passing thereof. Yeah, that part, that might get changed. Not saying this is just a presumption, if I had to guess. Would not know. Okay, well, that's for them parts. Sorry, everyone. I know it's a lot to read. That's just that bit. Alright. So this is what was brought down. Alright. Memoriam, which is not relatable, but I will need to see what these. Oh, good lord. Fuck's sake! Apologies. That's a law. Will it be relevant though? These are the debates. So maybe there might be something in it that might be of relevance. But good lord. Okay, so for now I will X out these parts because I have the link from. So I'll X these out because I will be having to revise this anyway. Sorry for the moaning. Anyhow, so glossary terms related to the conflict. So what's the conflict? Now, this is where I'm just having to go at, with the troubles, for instance. That's another term they've used. But just see if there's anything that comes up that might be of relevance. Provisional Irish Republican Army, PIRA, responsible for the bombing. Okay, abstention, policy abstention. Traditional policy of Sinn Féin and the Irish Republican Army of abstaining from uptake in any seats won at the Dáil or Westminster elections. Okay, acceptable level of violence. In 1971, Ronald Malden, then British Home Secretary, declared that the situation in Ireland at the time amounted to an acceptable level of violence. Later unionist politicians in particular claimed that this term effectively became the security policy of successive British governments who were prepared to countenance paramilitary activity so long as it remained in what is judged to be manageable proportions. Okay, Active Service Unit, ASU of the IRA, part of the major overhaul of its structure in the late 1970s, the Irish Republican Army, IRA, chose to reorganize its members as small units to order to counteract measures being taken up against its security forces within Northern Ireland. These small groups become known as active service units, often consist of 5 to 8 members. Within a short period of time, the system was adopted by all parliamentary organisations in North of Ireland, including those of the Loyalist side. So this is something, I'm not saying it's relevant here, everyone now, but I have no idea what exactly is going to be entailed. But no harm in having a little history lesson. Goodness gracious, the thoughts of having to read all these. Now, everyone knows about the Good Friday Agreement and the kind of conflict that's going on at the moment with, I'm not saying foreigners are involved in this, but it might affect the agreement if things go south with Keir Starmer. I know that was already dealt with already, but a history lesson for that won't be a bad thing. So I'll just, sorry, just these. Because they might be relevant for later, and who knows. Agreements. Okay. Not saying it's going to be relevant, but you wouldn't know. So I'm keeping this backlogged for later on when I'm summarizing this all. I'm just gracious, I'm to summarize it all. Will be a bit of a tall order. See, Alliance Party, mainly middle class political party at which aims to attract support from both the main communities in Northern Ireland. David Ford has been leader. On Public, the name of a weekly newspaper on the. Wait a minute, I've seen that. Oh, I wasn't there. I've seen it one of them. Guess I did. I thought. Give me 1 second. Just gonna look through the history log. On Public would show up. Yeah, I'm using Brave at the moment, by the way. Yeah, look, they really are effective. So let's see here. Anything on Public that came up recently? I guess so. Alright. I thought I know some maybe on the search. That was another case. Alright, King Glossary. Alright, so let's see. I thought I seen that. Mental Republic. Ancient Order, the Hibernians. Yeah, this might be a thing. Like, this is where our neutrality comes from more so. The Hibernians are Hyperborea in a way. Now, there is other things that we probably don't know. I don't know, I haven't seen it. History lesson, if you will. Okay, okay, just trying to skim over anything relevant. Anglo-Irish Agreement. Apprentices Boys Dairy. Or Carroll, Irish term for meaning Spring Council. Army Council. Okay, Armed Struggle. Arms Trial. Army Convention. From 69. Ah, okay, that's something to know, I guess. Okay. Sorry, I know there's a lot, but look, you want to know if any of this will be relevant in regards to, what is it? When they're doing a defense force change. So I'm just taking everything to heart and seeing if anything will reflect on possible changes to what Helen McEntee has in store, you know? So I'm just trying to be realistic here with everyone. Hello. Now this yoke I was wondering about. Good Friday Agreement was not on my bingo card for this. Maybe something to be considered. That might be a thing that might get affected that we probably weren't aware of. Because there was mention of the Good Friday Agreement and its effects. So we'll need to have a check with that layer and how it affects triple lock. Not saying they're gonna have a conjunction or conjuncture, but God knows what they've been doing behind the scenes that we're not aware of, everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's at least good practice to work on my editing, I guess, until I get things sorted. When I do them other two videos in regards to Stop Killing Games and then the One Punch Man, then I suppose I could do one more for a few individuals. But I still need to work on it run online. That's something I need to complete. It's been getting taxing on trying to grind the materials, soloing it, and then expecting the drops. And I'm not spending money, so that's why it's taking so much longer. Because I'm not wasting my money on gacha for that case. Played it for over 12 years. I can keep it going and not lose out. And not be wasting my money unnecessarily when playing gacha games. Bandit Country. Battle of Bogside. Alright. Not seeing Battle of Boyne. That was with Protestant King. Wait, was it Oliver Cromwell and something like that? Dickhead. Apologies, Bob. I never will like that man, Oliver Cromwell. Kill all of our wolves. I will not forgive you for that. Mm-hmm. Black propaganda. The blanket. Bloody awful country. Okay. At least these are good articles to know. Maybe they'll account for something in the future, you know? Oh, jeez, Boris Johnson, you did a real bogger on that. Okay. Because that did affect, it would be something to consider how, like, they're still in Brexit currently. I won't know how that's going to affect. Flick. Agreement. And triple lock. Yeah, you're saying this is meant to affect anything in regards to this. You want to know? You really want to know what will happen. So no harm in taking all these into consideration. I'm not saying they all have a hand to play with the UK, but look, Ireland and the UK have had their qualms for a long time, so you won't know what's going on in the background. Okay. What is this? Broadcasting ban in 1972, the Irish government, in the wake of growing unrest in the north of Ireland, chose to ban broadcasting of interviews involving members of illegal organisations. This was done by means of Section 31 in 1961, prohibited broadcasting of any sort of material seen as promoting inciting crime. Okay. So that would explain that thing I seen on Twitter about them posting that. That was very interesting to know. What was it? President Tusk? What is what man's name was? Was it Tusk? Tusk. Yep, that was right. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry about that, everyone. I know you're having to look at all this. Turns to meal. See before Kremlin. Wait, what? Kremlin? Never mind. Okay. This is something that might be affected. Not saying the IRA are going to make a comeback, which they probably won't, but Bertie Ahern was one of their members, will never admit to it, but you know yourself. You know, there is a lot to cover. Yeah, I'm skimming through this a lot now, so I apologize if you can't keep up, but I'm trying to save my time. See if there's anything relevant in these words. Yeah, I know, I can actually read quite fast when I really feel like it. But it does burn the eyes as a result. A lot of people don't like doing. Four horsemen. What's this? Leading Irish American politicians joined together with for Friends of Ireland, encouraged a peaceful resolution. Senator Edward Kennedy. Okay. Oh, all right, well, that's something to consider. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Uh, okay. Oh, oh Lord. Hmm. Okay. 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 Hmm. Kangaroo car, huh? Oh, okay, that's something to consider. King Rat. Jeez, he was a white rat. Okay, 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 okay. Nothing of relevance. Mm-hmm. Wait. I seen this security service, British security service, which was responsible for domestic counterintelligence operations. I seen those. I seen that mentioned before recently. Put you in there. So that's the situation up in Northern Ireland anyway. I've seen that. Okay, what else is there? Anything of relevance? Hmm. Okay, okay. Alright. Okay. Let's see here. Right? Our armies. Talk about researching overtime, man. What does MB? That just really means just something of importance that will come up later. Segregation, as I've heard of that word. I seen that word earlier when I was reading that 1954 article with all them things in it for the Defence Force. I had mentioned this. So they're still active. That's something to actually watch out for. Why? Come on. Darn it. Yeah, that's something to be concerned with the UK about, because that could actually affect us in the triple lock. Can alter. Unannounced. Current. Deterrent measures. As I taught. Just a thought, everyone. You don't know if it will happen, but I just thought about stick knife. Hmm. Okay, steak affair, stick knife. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Nearly done. Sorry about that. I know it takes a long time reading all the details, but you know yourself. Chief. Huh. Definitely works out better, huh? Chief Michael Martin. I like that. Not a bad way. no harm in having these little things in here every now and then. Oh, here it is. I knew it was in here. Nope. So that's what happened to that. See, I'm smart enough to pay attention, huh? Without knowing it. This tournament emerged during the political negotiations in 1990 involving Northern Ireland politicians, the British and the Irish governments. In essence, it is proposed that three basic conditions had to be met before any settlement could be agreed. Namely, there could be an agreement between the political parties within the North of Ireland and a proposal to win the acceptance of the electorate within Northern Ireland through a referendum, and finally, had to win the support of the British Parliament. Later, the concept of triplelock would apply to political talks that were accumulated. Signature. Yeah, so this Good Friday actually has to do with it. Good Friday as well as the triplelock. This is what I had a suspicion about. This is something to be made aware of. And I'll just do that. Which one is it? Darn it, I'll have to go on Twitter. Sorry about that one. Oh, my joints. My muscles. Oh. Sorry about the noise. I kind of got a little pent up and I released that. I don't know. I know it can really put people off. Where is she? Don't worry, it's just to kind of make sure I don't forget that part. A lot of people probably aren't familiar because, like, the triple lock isn't something people are aware of the word. Give me 1 second anyway. Oh, what's this? Like a page sub? That's cool. I see. Give it 1 moment. Sorry, everyone. I know you want me to be quicker, but hashtag Ireland, UK, triple lock. Well, more terminology. Okay, what was the name of the website? Ulster. Tool ID. Now, don't take my word for it. Just have a bit of research yourselves, okay? Not a note about. Betrayal. Darn it. Betrayal. Question mark? Just at all. No, I probably spelled wrong with betrayal, but I think people can get just. So what is it? Just making sure. Okay. Now, I don't know if anyone's actually going to look at this, but I thought I'd just say it. Okay, anyhow, back to the story. Okay, let's see if there's anything else to us. My eyes! The freaking light! Darn white. Sorry, everyone. I say y'all got burned by that too. Totally unaired. Struggle was politician. The two opponents and critics' concerns. Now, I say they're going to probably freak out if the politicians notice my tweets. If they bothered reading, since I accidentally added Helen McEntee in a sense. I'm thinking. I got comments. Oh no, I didn't. Darn you! You tricked me, Twitter. But yeah, Ulster Defense Association, Freedom Fighters, illegal? Question mark? Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to unfortunately learn about this, everyone. Excuse me. Sorry about the belching. Like, I won't be doing much more. I'm just kind of get a bit of a summary about this. Okay, authorization. Veto. Veto? Some. I've heard of that word being mentioned in multiple scenarios, so it's not just an Irish thing, but it's something to be concerned with. As to what its possible definition would be, because there's probably different terms that we're probably not familiar with, you know? Just checking. Alright. Yellow card. And I thank the Ulster law for having this. This actually saved a lot of understanding. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help. Might need to reference them for this case because they were actually very helpful in finding stuff. Reference. Now, I'm not doing a Harvard referencing because it's not relevant in regards to video, but we'll definitely give an any for this. Anyhow, that's one knocked down. That one I'll have to leave for another time. Finnegan's light defense. So what is this about to begin with? How does it affect everything? So from top, the cover of Pinnegale MEP discussion paper on Ireland's defence and security policies, Derek Mooney. When was this done? This was back in 2018 by Derek Mooney in the evening time at lunch just after it. I am out of the country for a few days and missed last night's RT's One Claire Byrne live discussion on Irish defence policy. Claire Byrne, huh? Hmm. That's a very fishy thing to be saying now. What would you have been saying, Claire Byrne, and who are you talking to? Entee commentary. That's something I have to be wary of. Maybe, I remove the italics, drop it down. What are you doing? There you. Okay. For goodness, Lady Janie sense. Make up your mind. Stop messing with me like that. Okay, regrettably, sorry. Based on the social media commentary, it seems talk was as much, if not more, about neutrality or the myriad different interpretations of neutrality than it was about policy. Regrettably, most attempts to try and have a sensible discussion on national security and the threats that face us flounder on tired, ill-informed, hypercharged arguments of neutrality. Hypercharged, huh? Neutrality is not unimportant, but arguing continually over its definition, who is more neutral and who means we miss the core issue and how we develop and maintain the capability to protect ourselves and contribute to increasing global security. Now, that's something really odd. Oh yeah, OBS, do you crash out on me or what? Hello? OBS, I'm making sure you're awake here. Why? You giving out to me over something? Alright, just making sure everyone sees this. See, I'm just making sure the display capture has been working right. Okay, so I'll just continue reading. So let us get the definitions out of the way. Ireland is military neutral. This means more than simple not being part of a military alliance. It means we decide for ourselves how much we spend on defence and what strength defence force we want and how we deploy them. It also means that we support multilateralism via the United Nations as long as Ireland's position that one of the most tangible contributions can make to global peace and stability is to deploy our troops on Chapter 6 and 7 of Multilateralism Peace Enforcement Operation mandate. Well, thank you for answering that. I was kind of wondering. I wondered what that part was about actually earlier on with the United Nations. Let's see, what was that bit? Wait, probably keep it under commentary. You stupid flounders. Okay. See. It is why we sent approximately 1,600 troops per year to do precisely that in decade leading up to 2009. Whether a mission has been NATO-led or EU-led or whatever has not been an issue. Once it has been mandated by the United Nations, a sensible position for a small nation that believes in international law. Give me a second here. Oh, that's the reason my phone's been acting up. Just give me a second. Is my social media acting up or is it what? No, it's working. I guess Twitch was acting up on me, so I'll just read it here on Twitch. Now, the policy, this latest attempt to start debate appears to have been provoked by a short discussion document titled Ireland and the EU Defending Our Common European Home from Fine Gael's group of MEPs. Hello. Well, thank you for quoting them. I'll have to verify that for later if it's bullshit you said or what. Just to make sure you're not lying. Just I know it was back in 2018, but even still, you won't know. Provoked being the key word. The document so outraged that good folk in Sinn Féin, one of their number, was moved to thunder on about how Fine Gael MEPs were set to tear up Ireland's military neutrality and expose their extremist and dangerous far-right positions on European security. Is it now? And yet, right now, Sinn Féin are doing the opposite of what was just mentioned here. So this is a counter-argument in a sense. So this will be something to revise. While Fine Gael do indeed urge us wrongly, in my view, to redefine the concept of Irish neutrality and to amend Ireland's triplelock system, is a gross overreaction wrong to call their document extremist or far right. In my opinion, the biggest problem is that it is lightweight. There is It's not there aren't some other decent ideas in the document. There are but a paper and even a discussion making 10 recommendations for a progressive future Irish security and defence policy should stretch to a bit more than just 7 A4 papers of text in a 16-page pamphlet. National defence and security are a big issue. There is a serious debate to be had, so if you're going to kickstart one, I'm offer something more closely argued and researched than a poor reheat of bits of Gay Mitchell's 2003 Beyond Neutrality. Okay, well, that'll be something to consider. I'm just looking at anything that has quoted reference from. I'm not saying it's there or not, but Gay Mitchell. Give me 1 minute. Helen, Gay Mitchell, who are you? Sorry, I'm just going off topic here to just have a quick look at who this person could be. Alright, try to go for President of Ireland. Just want to have a quick check, not being pessimistic or that. So, I'm not saying he did or didn't, I'm just curious. Oh, George Mitchell, anyway. Okay, Mitchell. All right, he's clear. No, I was just curious. That's all. You can never be too careful, so you won't know. Not saying he was ever involved, but it wasn't the point I asked the question. Though, to be fair, this time Fine Gael does manage not to be called our military neutrality a sham or dismiss the triple lock as the application of national sovereignty. Still, 15 years later, and no one in Fine Gael can make a better case against the triple lock than citing a lone 2003 EU peacekeeping mission to FYR Macedonia. If this is the only reason why Fine Gael can come up to get rid of the triple lock, then advocates like me of the triple lock have no case to answer. Even Fine Gael's discussion on the origins of the triple lock misses the point. Read the Fine Gael paper and you would think it dates in the 1990s. Wrong. The triple lock mechanism itself goes back to the 1954 and 1960 Defence Acts. It essentially states that a triple lock and the UN mandate government and the approval is required to send contingents of more than 12 armed troops overseas. 12 armed troops overseas. I'll have to take your word on that, but I'll just quote you on that. If you've been misleading what is quoted in the article before it's summarized, I'll have to catch you on that. Don't you worry, I'm not missing out on anything you've been saying. I know there's probably more RTE and other staff ever that's involved in saying this, but I have to be sure. It is not nothing worth nothing here that Fine Gael threats that we will not be able to assist in a humanitarian crisis or natural disaster. But misses the point of the UN mandate part only applies when sending armed contingents of more than 12. There is no restriction on unarmed contingents assisting with natural disasters. Okay, though they do not make it this time, the other charge levied against the triple lock is that it is slow. What's going on here? What's going on with you? Hmm. Yeah, in 2007 to 8, when Ireland took part in and commanded the EUF or mission in Chad, we were among the first on the ground. We're waiting for other non-triple lock countries to catch up. It was during the preparations for this EU-led mission that I had the pleasure of hearing in the UK Defence Secretary Dr. John Reid sum up using the words George Robinson the approach of some interminable EU ministerial gatherings say everything that needs to be said has been said, but it hasn't been yet been said by everyone. Okay, so the slight sleeve allows me to to acknowledge some of the MEP's more positive suggestions before I return to my other major complaint. The MEPs rightly focus on the need to establish a cohesive national cybersecurity strategy. Well, that is relevant, and he's agreeing with it. This is an issue that Fianna Fáil's James Lawless TD raised yesterday when he urged the government to prioritise the National Cybersecurity Centre following reports that the Russian intelligence services are taking an unhealthy interest in the Irish technology and scientific sector. Well, no, fairness, they probably have their motives, like they're just trying to help themselves and learn all this stuff. Even still, like, what's the reason? Is there something they know that we don't? That's why they're snooping around. MEPs also called for the creation of both a Central Intelligence Unit and a National Security Council. These are two proposals that should have been considered years back, but things in defense they have done properly. No, okay, hello. So basically, like a shadow government in Ireland, which is something we don't want. We already have legal versions in Ireland, believe it or not. Not illegal, just ones that are announced to the public. You know, the IRA and all the other ones are not well known. While the Fine Gael MEPs deserve credit for bringing the defence to the fore, albeit via a flimsy vehicle, their calls for increased defence spending on capabilities, research and personnel, they ignore the fact that it has been their own party leaders who have both served as defence minister as well as the Taoiseach since 2016 who have not just failed to act, they have looked the other way. Yeah, everyone kind of knows they all failed, not just them. So don't be just singling them out. Oh, yeah, you little, yeah, you're no one to talk. Since 2011, one single minister has effectively run the show, although he was intentioned guy who was happy to travel overseas as to visit troops and take salute at reviews. He never had the political clout to make defence issue at the cabinet. I'm not laying all the blame for the cuts at Fine Gael's door. I was there when we cut the defence force strength from 10,500 1,000 basically took off on the foot of board Schnipp. New report in 2008 2009, but that was intended as a temporary measure. Okay, so yeah, decade later, the government struggles to even keep it. Okay, I understand for in case of emergencies, but there are reasons for that. At the same time, the number serving on overseas operations have over-halved, with a hefty consequent effect on soldiers' pay, and that's on top of the other unaddressed issues from Lansdowne Road Agreement. Let's have a look at that later. See if it's legitimate or what. The major progress made in modernizing and improving the Defence Force in terms of training, equipment, and conditions on foot was the House and Defence White Paper, the first of its kind, has been all but lost. We need to commit to getting back to where we were in 2006 and 7 in terms of equipment, pay, and capabilities. Yeah, you can blame the finance minister for his muck ups lately on that. Yeah, well, that's a problem in all parts of finance. A major step in that direction would be appoint a defense minister of a cabinet level for whom the role is now part-time and mandate them to bring Old Aaron back up to Old Aaron, eh? Why have I heard that source somewhere? Just give me a sec here. I've seen that word before. What? Ah, so that's what it was. Okay, never mind. Derek Mooney is a communication and public affairs consultant. He previously served as ministerial advisor to Fianna led government 2004 to 2010. His column appears here every Tuesday. Follow Derek on. So you're Derek Mooney. Wait, what? Communications and public affairs. Wait, what's down here? So are we neutral? Is our neutrality an issue for the Constitution? If so, is this a matter for the people to decide by referendum? Now this is back years ago. Constitutional matter. Ireland is a neutral insofar as never declared war on another state, is not, never has been, nor should it be considered constitutional matter. We've had a better defence minister than Willie O'D. One wiggle of the majestic tack would have them running for the hills. Yeah. Chapter 7 missions are peace enforcement opposed to peacekeeping as far as I know, something that we barely equipped to carry out. The Finns are pulling out from Unifil Irish Finn Bat in Lebanon, and the Irish are in a panic as to will get the equipment presently supplied by the Finns to be able to make it all Irish unit. We'll probably rent from the departing Finns. Sinn Féin getting pity about neutrality. Jeeves weeps. Before talking about neutrality, perhaps we should take a look at the threats, which is the only country that ever attacked us. Not PC to say, but be England, Britain, the UK, and the different forms over the years. Which is country most likely to attack. This is conjecture, but most likely the UK, in the event of a bad Brexit. Would you look at that? Followed by a vote of Scotland to leave the UK and a vote by Northern Ireland to leave. My guess they would take a page from Russia's playbook in Ukraine plus some of the old reliable UVF, DUP adjacent. So what kind of military allowance would help there? Or would the clowns in Leinster House be even prepared for that? That person brings up a very interesting point. Where the hell does this even come from? Is this person part of the army or something? There was no way you could have known this kind of information unless you were part of the army, lad. Me fan, huh? Just a consideration. This one has an attention on me. I'm taking a screenshot of that one. That one has my attention for a lot of bad reasons. Like, how did you even know this information to begin with? Unless you were an army man or well up brass, there was no way you were going to know this. Info 1. That is crucial information what you just had there, and how you knew this is going to play a role in this video. Thanks for that. Roberti, if you're talking about preparing for a possible invasion by the UK, then I don't think you need to look as far as Leinster House to see a clown. Perhaps you should read the comment again before throwing clown accusations around. He's right. You might want to rephrase what you just said. So tell us, Derek, who should we be killing to protect our European bosses? The Russians, the African migrants, the Muslims, the Chinese, them strange people who moved in down the road, maybe might stick on a uniform and go off and do it yourself. Gringo has a valid point there with sarcasm. Italian 90. Claiborne as good as a Bashir as Sir Hitler and a Nazi last night. Are we aligning ourselves with ISIL or Al Qatar now? There are too many similarities between Syria and Iraq under Saddam Hussein, the invasion, or Libya under Gaddafi. Ah, these people must know stuff. Well, they freaking learned the know-how back then. The only reason, true in the news, the only reason that this policy is being pushed is to get the new toys for the army and have the top brass rubbing shoulders with the rest of their NATO ilk. Examine our current forays overseas. Best part of the 100 deaths defending other countries' borders since 1961, then the farce of protecting other countries to rob our fishing resources when prosecuting our own people trying to make a living. Has Switzerland got involved in any of this? The outfit we call Defence Force costs nearly billions and has poor value for money. We need to emulate the Swiss and have a national service force where be all able bodies called up for national security and training. But this would upset certain officer class elite in their posh uniforms and will polish red shoes that don't need polish themselves. That's a valid point. Where the hell are these people when you needed them? Like no one even knew. Thank you, Trend the News. I appreciate that, and that would be a relevant point for later, I guess. Now I know there's a lot to go through. My gosh, finding all these parts. How the hell did people not know about this in general? Okay. And then this one, Usna Heron. This is a review 2022. It's 20 to 11 now. Strengthen the nation. So what is this review about? Who published this? Disclaimer: this view, material and views expressed in these papers are those of the authors which have been subject to academic peer review and do not indicate official approval of the Defense Forces Department of Defense. Published by the military authorities by public relations sections at the Chief of Staff's branch and printed at the Defence Force Printing Press, Infirmary Road, Dublin 7, copyright in accordance with Section 56 of the Copyright Act 1963, Section 7 of the University of Limerick Act 1989, and Section 6 of the Dublin University Act 1989. Change or continue Ireland's Defence Force in an era of unpredicted conflict and challenge. So it's like a narrative set. How many pages am I going to be reading? 16? Over 170? You fucking mad? Yep. My avatar knew to run away the moment seen that. Okay. Jeez, Lord. Okay, what is the what contents to begin with? Attempt to take Zawandi, continuing change in the Irish national security policy, Professor Andrew Cottney. Yeah, a lot of theses were done to this. Tribute that vice paid virtue analysis of Russia's justification for the invasion of Ukraine under international law. Lieutenant Kane Warren, PhD, Justice and Accountability for Crimes committed in Ukraine. Professor Ray Murphy, Artillery and Fire Support and Defense Forces of the Future. Captain Brian Clark, Parabellum assesses Europe's industrial capacity to answer Europe's new military budget increase. Dr. Elsie Lafleur. Okay. A change for the Defense Forces and approach to work in time directive implementation using Cutter's 8-step change module. Embracing change, outsourcing design and management of Irish Defence Forces, clothing and wearables. James McCorsier, surfing of the wave, organizational cultural change. Can the Defence Force adapt to the recommendations of the Commission of the Defence Forces? Lieutenant Commander David Memory. Those who have power use it. Dr. James McAfee. From observation to action, explore new horizons over the Defence Forces. Senior enlisted leader, Senior Chief Petty Officer Rurio Debar. In the narrow corridor, the OSCE Special Monitoring Missions SMM to Ukraine, January 21, 22, Neil D. After the war ends, Ireland, the Reserve Defence Force, peacekeeping, the Russia-Ukraine war, Jonathan Carroll and Neil Richardson. I say Helen McEntee read this. There was no way she came with this on her own. She probably got this from these crazy people. All guard no offense, a legal consideration of the recent Russian military exercise off the coast of Ireland. Yeah, everyone's seen that. Apparently they're messing with the internet cables there. Contributor biographics abstract CSC. Then what's the other one? Yeah, they're watching. Okay, so what I'll do is this might come in handy for people to read up on. I shall just read. Oh, good lord. I say there's probably a book of it somewhere, everyone. If you wanted to really read up on this, I'd say it's there. Excuse me. Sorry about the belching. Excuse me. So let's see, what was the reply again? Still, considering how much reading will be required to analyze and break this down into a short format, will be hard to consider. You know, like there's going to be a lot to read up on here. Hey, get back up here. And then, so I'm just do it like that. Give me a sec here while I do this. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I appreciate you reading up on this. Darn it. Let's see here now. Okay, and that's that bit. So yeah, that's gonna take a lot of reading. So what's the pamphlet cover? Open Air and Irish Defence Forces Review 2022 on www.military.ie if you want to find it here. Okay, that's where it is. But yeah, anyhow, what other thing can I summarize before I forget? So I'm gonna have to read up the debate for the one that was most recent with the motion private members. So who were the members involved? You have Deputy Shanna Gibney. I'll just go to scroll who was involved in this conversation here. Then we have Thomas Bryan, he speaks Oswego, Deputy Gary Gannon, Deputy Aidan Farrell, Deputy Rory Hearn, Minister of State at the Department of Defense, Thomas Bryan. So he would have been a minister before Helen McEntee took over. Just saying. Jeez, it definitely goes on monthly explanations. Deputy Cian O'Callaghan, Padraig Rees, Deputy Padraig Rees, Deputy Mahi McGrath, Deputy Don Shad O'Leary, Deputy Sean Crow, Deputy Matt Carthy, Deputy Louise O'Reilly, Deputy Paul Donnelly, Deputy Kai Pennant, Deputy Mark Ward, Deputy Reid Farrell, Deputy Duncan Smith, on Carterlock, Newmarket, Deputy James O'Connor, Deputy Paul Murphy, Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett, Deputy Roger O'Gorman, Deputy Catherine Connolly, Deputy Peter Tobin, he's from Onto, he definitely wanted to go against it. Deputy Neil Richmond, Deputy Michael Collins, Deputy Neil Richmond, Deputy Michael Collins, Peter Tobin, Deputy Michael Collins, I already said that. Deputy Richard O'Donoghue. Okay. O'Neill. Oh wait, Minister of State, Department of Foreign Affairs, Deputy Neil Richmond. So what I'll do is I'll quote these people in the summary just to know who was in this talk. Deputy Lynn Quaid, Deputy Jean Cummins. That sounds like a British surname. Okay. Okay, just see if anyone else has been interjecting after this. Rory Hearn, I think he was there. Alright, so that was all them. Jeez. That was a lengthy chat. Okay, so just gonna quote the people that were in this, just to know, for my own personal environment. So, topic in regards. I am really gonna hate having to read all their nonsense brain rot. That's gonna burn my britches. Just saying, everyone. I'm not a fan of reading dialect to that extent. Members involved as followed. Okay. Don't worry, I can take off the underline. Kind of funny the way it is now. It's an italic format. Make sure to save that. Sorry for wasting all your time. I know it's a lot to take in, so I kind of have to summarize it as best I can while having to brain rot everyone trying to figure this all out, I guess. No, I know you can all look at it as well if you really want, but it's like, do I really have the time to waste reading their bullshit? Can I let this fella figure it out? Give him a day or two and have it right. Like, I ain't doing this for the love of it, you know? I need people to correct me like at homework. This is what it'll be like. Because I won't be able to do this on my own. I know everyone else will want to put on their thoughts. And memory wise, no one's going to remember all their conversation. That's, even photographic memory has a limit to a degree. Remember every conversation, especially a bullshit. Who would want to remember that unless you're that guy from, was it Doctor Strange? You know? You're the same fella. Okay. Okay. And I really don't like having to listen to politicians, but in this case, it's kind of relevant. Jesus, this chicken's got me hungry. It's nearly 10 to 11. I won't be able to stay up much longer because I work early in the morning. Just saying to you, I go up early. Apart from doing farming and all the rest, but you know yourself. Even though it's not really much farming, just make sure the animals are fed and checking if they're okay is the main thing. But you know yourself anyway. My word, I tell you. If there's anything I've or repasted or posted or copied, I'll know. But doing this anyway is the best way to do it. And I really appreciate the people who type this out. Actually, I know it's very tedious for them to do all this work, and fair play to them. They had to type all this out or write it out, and I'm not joking. That is a hard job. They're, they had to have good wrist when typing or writing out this. That's a guaranteed fact. So that's something not everyone can do, and I've seen it. I'm definitely not up to that crack of doing it all the time. Louise Riley. I put her in here, Louise. No, Louise. Louise, Louise. Jeez, Louise, you know. Okay, Paul Donnelly. Yeah, but anyone who has questions, I'm sorry that I can't answer them right now because I'm kind of focused on doing this. And I don't know any more than politicians other than decrypting bullshit is all I can do in this regards. Did I put in K bet? No, I didn't. Okay. Just making sure. Caddy Bennett. I know a few Bennetts actually. Hope they're not related to these people. Mark Ward. Marie Farrell. Look, the reason why I don't like educating myself in politics was scientific, what is it? Scientific psychology or political talks of some degree. I think is what it is. Sorry, just making sure. Duncan Smith. Your father must have been very proud to give you that name, I'd say. Because it is a pretty cool name. So I imagine Catherine Conley will be coming up. Nearly at the end of all this conversation. I think Paul Murphy's meant to be in Egypt for my part. Does he support Antifa or something like that? Yeah, I think he's one of them people that does. That would not have been a great thing to copy and paste into this. Nearly there, everyone. Sorry, but I know it's a lot of having to check how to reference each of these individuals in a summary. Good lord. Now, it's very possible there was other ones that were off the record that weren't recorded in their local ones. Now, that's something I'll have to double check on. I'll need to be extra careful when dealing with this, you want to know. Peter Tobin. Tobin! No way if he's related to that Tobin fella I know. Very possible. No, he does have that tone, so maybe he's a relation of his. Wow, who would have known? Jamie. The Tobins are something to not underestimate. Just making sure I copy that. Don't want to be copying the wrong thing. Okay, I say it should be nearly at the end of them, right? Did I get Neil Orman? Yeah, Richmond, there he is. Phones, okay. Richard O'Donoghue, did I get you? Richard. No, not you, you're a different Richard. Okay, just make sure. Alright, I'll correct my wording if I notice anything is repeated. Well, after I summarize it. I mean, Quaid, you weren't in it. Oh, Lord. I think I'm near the end of it. Sorry for wasting everyone's time, but I hope this bit of information I shared with you on Twitter might give you a heads up of what's going on. To a degree. Did I get Rory on? Rory, where are you? Rory, Hearn, yeah, you're there. James O'Connor, did I get you? James O'Connor. Yeah, I got you. That's good. Yeah, so that's all of them for that. And this one. I'm just wondering about that. That's something I'm going to need to check. And this was back with ratification, so how far was that? So not as many. Okay, I could probably do that. Up to 11. Excuse me. Okay. Keyhole. Why does that name sound very annoying? No, I don't mean it a bad way. It's just like I don't know why. I don't personally like that person. Could be just some reason you want to know. Embers involved as followed. Okay. Right, I'm getting the dates. I already have them now, and so I won't need to have to re-go back over everything and make sure I don't copy and paste unnecessary dialects. You never know what the find nowadays. At least this conversation isn't as long, so it shouldn't be as bad. So I'll need to have to check what they were actually talking about. Now this is on public records. I don't know what they've also said behind closed doors, which will be a bit more concerning that'll need to be looked into. Because I'm not saying I'll get all the information regards to all this, because there's a level degree I'll only be able to get. Hey, he doesn't have his face up here. He's a clever fella. He knows where he's at. He knows what he was doing. He's no fool. He knows what he's dealing with when he goes to social media, and that's a good thing. You were in here, huh? Very interesting. Mick Wallace. He knew what he was at as well. I've heard his name. He's not so trusting. I've heard his voice, and he definitely gives off a vulgar tone that you don't trust. Not being racial about or anything, but I recall he comes from a very notorious group. Now that's all I heard now. I'll need to double check that. Not reference it, but just check it. Michael Healy Ray. I seen him on a very video or something recently. Being called out for something. I wonder what it was about. Okay. Now I don't know if they will look at social media when I do this summary. They may get mad at me and try find out who I am. That is the thing people need to be made aware of. Not saying they will or won't, but just as how. Eugene Murphy, acting chairman. Yeah, but this is something I'll need to consider when doing all this. Okay, well that's all these summaries for now. Whoops. I knew I made an error looking at that. Okay, let's see. What else do I need to come across? There. Okay. Because I got to look at this file, and I don't know what that will entail. But why I'm looking at this file with the guns. I'm just gonna have a quick look at this. Something about this seems fishy. How long is it? 8 pages, not a lot. Okay. Hmm. Hello, here we go. Huh, I was wondering this. Hmm. Hmm. This has a question mark. This has a question mark. Very big question mark. I was wondering that. I'll have to get back on that later, I guess. But yeah. Anyhow. So I have to read this ratification of the EU and NATO Sales Forces Agreement. That was back before the COVID-19. And then this Defiance Act. So there. Then there's Clinton. Apparently he helped out in the Northern Ireland peace process, which is going to be very suspicious because he has a track record. So I'm just wondering what else was involved with him. I don't trust Bill Clinton, unfortunately. I know he seems like a goofball, but after everything that just happened, I'm going to have to really surmise this. Just saying, everyone, there's a bigger picture to this whole scenario, and I'm going to have to get to the bottom of it. But that's all I have to do for now, everyone. Have a good night. Rest up, okay? I'll try to do what I can for you. Good night to all and to all.